Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Breeze Time with Kathy. It's so good to be with you again. I have a couple of brief announcements. First one is my Sunday worship service has been moved from 11 o'clock on Channel 22 to 1 o'clock on Channel 22. It will also air again for a second time on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. So think of that. My worship service Sunday 1 p.m., not 11. 1 p.m. on Sunday, and you got a second chance to see it again on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Catholic Mass will be moving to 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Now, and of course I'll continue to do Breeze Time at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, which is what this recording is for. Also, starting in September, the first Sunday in September, I will have a live worship service in the auditorium on Sunday at 11 o'clock. Down there in the auditorium, we'll be able to socially distance. Betty Cooley, our pianist, can't come back yet, but we will be able to at least be together in our time of worship. For those of you who don't feel comfortable coming to the auditorium, no problem. I know it's not convenient for all of you, and so I will continue to have the the same basic service will air on Channel 22 at 1 p.m. on Sunday and 1 p.m. on Wednesday. Also, new in September will be a Wednesday morning Bible study. It'll be at 10 a.m. in the auditorium. I will be leading it. And of course, we're in the auditorium, so we can all socially distant, maintain social distancing. I hope you'll consider joining with me. It'll be a weekly Bible study, and I have more information forthcoming on that. I was watching PBS the other day, and I saw that there was a special about the Dust Bowl years. That was a time of a real difficulty during the Depression. It contributed the droughts that happened in the late 20s, early 30s, and the crop failures and the stock market crash, and just the whole slew of problems that all came together to cause the Depression, contributed to what happened in the Midwest and the Midwest United States. There was a severe drought for a couple of years, and the soil dried up, and they didn't know as much about soil conservation in those days, and the techniques they used hadn't helped the situation at all. And the winds picked up the dirt, just became parched and dry, and became just a fine dust, and the wind would come through and pick it up, and there'd be these huge dust storms. And thousands of farmers lost everything. Well, when their topsoil just blew away, the farms were gone. Most of them had no other choice than just to get on the road and try to find work wherever they could. Some became migrant farm workers. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about now. My brother's married to my brother Bill. His wife's name is Jamie. And I came to know her mother, BettyJo Ballard Hall. And I'd like to tell you the stories that she told me. Seems like one Christmas she was there at my house. She came with Bill and Jamie when they came to celebrate Christmas. And while she was there, I have my computer out. It was this time when I was still in seminary, and so I did a lot of typing. And she wanted to dictate a story of her early childhood memories to me, and they were about those years. And I'd like to share some of those memories with you today. This is a picture of BettyJo Ballard Hall. And BettyJo was 79 years old in 2003 when she came with my brother and his wife and spent Christmas with us. And that was the year that she dictated the memories of her early childhood. She was born in 1924. She told me that her father, when she was born, had a ranch in Jefferson, Texas. It was a nice little community, just a little small place, but he had 40 acres. She had an older brother, 15 years older than her, and her parents wanted him to have a good education. She said, however, she said the men from the community had gotten together and they built a church school and things seemed to be doing well, but then it must have been around the late 20s, because she was, or 1929, 1930, when everything changed. The crops failed and there was no way to earn any money. So her father and the men from the community, they went out to Arizona, New Mexico, and California, and they looked for work. And when they found work, they sent for them. And BettyJo said she remembers riding in the back of a car, a Model A or a Model T, she wasn't sure which one. She rode in the back of it all the way to California, and she got so sick. She said she thinks she smelled gas fumes the whole way, and she always was, and ever since then, been sick sitting in the back seat of a car. She just said she just can't do it, and she sure couldn't do it back then. She said that when she got out there, her father had gotten work, and mainly they were migrant cotton workers. Migrant workers, and they picked cotton. As a matter of fact, this is a picture taken by a professional photographer in Mohawk Valley, Arizona. She told me that her mother is right there. That's a picture of her mother picking cotton. She says, if you notice, it's high cotton. And there's her mother picking cotton. It's probably about 1931 or 32. She wasn't sure which year. But she said one day a professional photographer came by, and she remembers she was sitting there under the trailer playing. And he took a picture of her mother. Her mother's wearing a denim dress, and it was faded to light blue. BettyJo said that her mother was usually assigned to weigh the cotton, because she had a reputation for being very reliable, and she would usually work at the weigh station, and then she'd gather the cotton right around there. So she'd pick about 200 pounds of cotton a day, and the workers would come in and they'd get their cotton weighed when their sacks were full. But she had to be careful, because BettyJo said some of them would pick up big clods of dirt, like big chunks of mud. She said when the ground was real dry, you could pick up a big clod of dirt, and it would weigh 6 or 7 pounds, and they'd throw that in their bag to try and increase their weight. But she said her mother had a reputation of being able to detect things like that, and so her mother would weigh the cotton and would also pick about 200 pounds a day in addition. Now her father was good, and he could pick 500 pounds a day, which was considered quite good for a laborer to pick cotton. And so that's pretty much, they did a lot of cotton picking, she said. They used to live in a tent, and they'd follow the harvest, and they slept on a straw mattress. She said when she did once have a doll, but when she was little, I suspect she probably had the doll from when they used to live in Texas. But unfortunately, she left the doll out in the rain, and because the doll got rained on, the face began to develop all this mold on it, and it was ruined. And she didn't want to give up the doll. But her father told her father went and got a shoebox, and they put the doll in the shoebox, and they had a nice funeral for the doll, and they buried the doll right there. And she said that made it easier to, when they packed up, to leave that doll behind. That would be the last doll she'd have for many years. She said she used to keep all of her possessions all of her little treasures, she said, in a shoebox. And I said, well, what was in that shoebox? Oh, she said, mostly it was things I'd collected. She said, pretty rocks. I used to look for pretty rocks and put them in there. But she said, I never did get another doll for not while we were traveling. She said, I had a cat, though. She said, my cat was big. I called him Boots, and my cat stayed with me there in the tent, which was nice, because he must have weighed 20 pounds. And it was nice because he used to sleep under the covers with me, and at night it would get real cold out there in Arizona and in those really dry places, and it would get cold at night. And Boots would help keep me warm. He also kept the tent free of any kind of animals. I asked her, I said, well, Miss Hall, what'd y'all feed the cat? She said, oh, we didn't have to feed him anything. Cats find their own food. And that cat stayed with her, she said, for several years. And that was her companion, was Boots. She said, that and my little box of treasures. She said, when I could, I went to school. And she said, and I would go to school for a short while, but then we'd move on, and maybe there was a school and maybe there wasn't. My mother had only gone to the 2nd grade, but she she taught me everything she knew, and even before I started school, Miss Hall said I could write my name, and I knew my numbers, and very quickly I learned to add and everything. So I can remember coming home from school and waiting for my mama, waiting while Mom and Dad finished work, and sitting there by the trailer where they weighed the cotton. She said, and the book I had was the Sears catalog. It's called the Wish Book. She said, I'd go through there by the hours, and I'd pick out the things that I wanted to buy, this doll for 19 cents and this doll for 29 cents. She said, I'd write them all down, and I'd total up all the numbers and add them up, and then I'd pick out more things, and I'd start all over again. And she said, I think that's why I got so good with numbers. And BettyJo really was good with numbers. She worked as a school teacher for 20 years and then after that she did another, I think, 22 years as an auditor. So for the parish, in the parish in Louisiana, in parishes are what they call counties in Louisiana. But at that time, she was talking about the years they were traveling and the things that they did and and things that happened to her. She really, times were real tough, she said. She remembers one night, kind of early on, the only thing they had to eat were 3 potatoes. And her father, they had no money, and her father was going to go out in the morning and try to get a job. And they decided that they would give their father the potatoes so he'd be strong enough to work all day and earn money. He got it. He found work that next day, and they did eat well. But she said they would travel, and as they traveled, they just made do. When it came to cook, when it came time for them to stop and eat, that her mother would take a number 3 wash tub. Her father would build a fire, and her mother would take a number 3 wash tub, and they'd set it up over the fire. I guess they allowed maybe put it on some rocks or something high enough that the air could get into the fire underneath. And they used that top just like it was a stove, and they'd cook. And she had a real treat. She said eventually her mother got a Dutch oven, which was really important, really special, because her father would then put the Dutch oven down into the fire, and put coals on top of it, and her mother would make the best biscuits. And she remembers how good they were, she told me. They were just wonderful. She said things were poor, but you just made do. BettyJo told me one time her father found work in Peoria, Arizona. He was working in a citrus grove. They had they harvested grapefruit and oranges, and it was his job. It was to control the irrigation of the orchard. She said they also had figs, and she remembers she and her mother used to pick the figs for money. Now,